The smoky atmosphere of the Red Rose Lounge hung thick with cigarette smoke and secrets as I nursed my third whiskey of the night, my hands trembling slightly as I reviewed the financial documents hidden in my briefcase. For 2 months, I'd been coming to this bar every Tuesday and Thursday, building my cover as David Chen, a small-time accountant looking for under-the-table work. But my real name is Agent David Torres, and I work for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. The Red Rose wasn't just any neighborhood bar. It was the unofficial headquarters for the Torino crime family's money laundering operation, where millions of dollars in drug money, extortion payments, and illegal gambling profits were cleaned and moved through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts. The backrooms hosted card games that decided the fate of businesses throughout the city, and the basement held meetings that determined life and death in the criminal underworld. I'd been assigned to this case because of my expertise in forensic accounting and my ability to trace money through complex financial systems. But there was another reason I'd volunteered for this dangerous undercover assignment, a personal reason that my superiors at the Bureau didn't know about. 5 years ago, my older brother Michael had died in what the police called a single-car accident on the Henry Hudson Parkway. But I'd never believed that story. Michael had been a brilliant accountant, working for a prestigious firm in Manhattan, with a beautiful wife and twin daughters who adored their father. He had everything to live for and no reason to lose control of his car on a straight stretch of highway he'd driven thousands of times. The accident report mentioned no skid marks, no evidence of mechanical failure, no indication that he'd even tried to brake before hitting that concrete barrier at 70 miles per hour. For 5 years, I'd carried the suspicion that Michael's death wasn't an accident. I'd followed every lead, investigated every connection, until I discovered that in the months before his death, he'd been asking questions about certain clients at his firm. Clients with Italian surnames and cash-heavy businesses. Clients who might not appreciate an accountant who asked too many questions about the source of their money. The Red Rose Lounge represented my best chance to find answers. If the Torino family had killed my brother, someone in this bar would know about it, someone would remember, and eventually someone would make a mistake that would give me the evidence I needed to bring them down. The bar itself was a relic. From the 1950s, all dark wood paneling and dim lighting, with a mahogany bar that stretched along one wall like an altar to vice. Boxing photos covered the walls, mostly local fighters who'd probably taken dives for the right price. The clientele was a mix of small-time criminals, bookmakers, and men who worked jobs during the day, but lived for the action that happened after dark. Behind the bar worked Sal Benedetto, a 70-year-old man with hands gnarled by arthritis and eyes that had seen too much. He'd been tending bar at the Red Rose for 30 years, serving drinks to 3 generations of Torino family members and associates. If anyone knew the history of this organization, it was Sal. I'd been cultivating a relationship with him slowly, carefully, the way you might approach a stray cat. A generous tip here, a kind word there, gradually building trust with a man who'd survived 3 decades in the criminal underworld by knowing when to talk and when to keep his mouth shut. Tonight felt different, though. There was tension in the air, the kind of electric anticipation that comes before a storm. Conversations were more hushed than usual, and several times I'd caught men glancing toward the back room where the family conducted its most serious business. That's when Vincent Torino walked through the front door. Vincent Viper Torino was the nephew of family boss Anthony Torino, a man in his early 30s who'd earned his nickname through his quick temper and his habit of striking without warning. He was tall and lean, with dark hair slicked back and cold eyes that missed nothing. He wore expensive suits that couldn't quite hide the shoulder holster underneath, and he moved through the world with the confidence of someone who'd never faced consequences for his actions. Vincent had been in prison for the past 2 years on a racketeering charge, and his release 3 weeks ago had shifted the power dynamics within the Torino organization. He was ambitious, ruthless, and hungry to reclaim his position in the family hierarchy. As he surveyed the bar, his eyes locked onto mine with the intensity of a predator spotting prey. I'd been careful to keep a low profile during his absence, but Vincent was the kind of man who noticed everything and trusted no one. "You," he said, pointing directly at me. "I don't know you." My heart rate spiked, but I forced my voice to remain casual. "David Chen, I've been coming here for a couple months. Sal can vouch for me." Vincent approached my table with deliberate steps, each footfall echoing in the suddenly quiet bar. Other patrons had stopped their conversations to watch what would happen next, sensing drama the way animals sense an approaching earthquake. "David Chen," Vincent repeated, tasting my fake name like it was spoiled milk. "What kind of work you do, David?" "Accounting," I said, sticking to my cover story. "Small businesses, mostly. Cash operations that need someone who doesn't ask too many questions." Vincent smiled, but it was a predatory expression that never reached his eyes. "Accounting. That's interesting. We had an accountant working for us once. Very talented guy. Too bad what happened to him." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I forced myself to show no reaction. Was he talking about Michael? Did he know who I really was? "Accidents happen," I said quietly. "Yeah," Vincent agreed, pulling out a chair and sitting down uninvited at my table. "Sometimes they do. Sometimes they need a little help." He leaned forward, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with the metallic scent of gun oil. "See, David, the thing about accountants is they see everything, every transaction, every payment, every place the money goes. That makes them valuable, but it also makes them dangerous." This was the moment I'd been preparing for, when my cover would be tested by someone with the skill and paranoia to see through carefully constructed lies. Vincent Torino had survived in the criminal world by being smarter and more ruthless than his competitors. If he suspected I was anything other than what I claimed to be, I was a dead man. "I just want to make some extra money," I said, playing the role of the small-time accountant looking for easy cash. "Help some business owners keep their books straight." Vincent's smile widened, showing teeth that were too white and too perfect. "Is that right? Because I've been asking around about you, David. And you know what's funny? Nobody seems to know where you came from. Nobody remembers recommending you to Sal. You just appeared one day like magic. If you think I should have run right then, leave escape in the comments. If you think I should have stuck to my cover story, leave truth. Don't forget to subscribe to see how this deadly game of cat and mouse unfolds." The silence in the red. Rose stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Vincent's accusation hung in the air between us, and I could feel the weight of every gaze in that bar pressing down on my shoulders. This was the moment when 2 months of careful preparation would either pay off or get me killed in the back room of a mob bar. "Look," I said, injecting just the right amount of nervous defensiveness into my voice. "I don't know what you're getting at, but I'm just trying to make a living here. If I'm not welcome, I'll take my business elsewhere." I started to stand up, but Vincent's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. His grip was like a steel clamp, and I could feel the bones grinding together under the pressure. "Sit down," he commanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "We're not done talking." Other patrons in the bar had turned away, suddenly finding their drinks fascinating. In this world, you survived by not seeing things that weren't your business, and Vincent Torino's business was definitely not something you wanted to witness. "I don't like loose ends," Vincent continued, his grip tightening on my wrist. "I don't like strangers who ask questions and show up at family establishments without proper introductions. And I especially don't like people who might be working for someone else. The accusation was clear, even though he hadn't said the words directly. He suspected I was either a rival family spy or, worse, law enforcement. Either way, my life expectancy had just dropped to minutes rather than years. "I'm not working for anyone," I said, trying to project the right combination of fear and innocence. "I'm just an accountant looking for clients." Vincent laughed, but it was a sound like breaking glass. "Just an accountant. You know, we used to have an accountant who said the same thing. Real smart guy. Handled all our books, made sure everything looked legitimate to the outside world." He leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear. "But even smart guys can get too smart for their own good. Start thinking they know better than the family how business should be conducted. Start making phone calls to people they shouldn't be talking to." My blood ran cold. He was talking about Michael. There was no doubt in my mind now. Vincent knew about my brother, knew what had happened 5 years ago. The question was whether he knew who I really was. "Sounds like he made some bad choices," I managed to say. "The worst choice," Vincent agreed. "The kind of choice that ends with a car going off the road at 70 miles per hour. Real tragic accident. Guy had a family and everything." The casual way he discussed my brother's murder made rage boil up inside me like molten metal. For 5 years, I'd wondered what had happened to Michael. Now, I was sitting across from his killer, listening to him brag about it like it was just another day at the office. But I couldn't show the anger. Couldn't let Vincent see the recognition in my eyes. One wrong expression, one slip in my facade, and I'd be joining Michael in whatever afterlife awaited murdered brothers. "Maybe I should go," I said, trying to stand again. This time Vincent didn't just grab my wrist. He stood up himself, his 6-foot frame towering over me, and grabbed me by the collar of my shirt. The expensive fabric bunched in his fists as he lifted me partially out of my chair. "Maybe you should," he snarled. "Maybe you should get the hell out of this bar, out of this neighborhood, out of this city. Maybe you should disappear so completely that nobody ever remembers there was ever a David Chen asking questions about our business." He was physically dragging me now, pulling me toward the front door, while other patrons carefully avoided looking in our direction. This was how it ended for people who crossed the Torino family, not with bullets or spectacular violence, but with quiet disappearances and unmarked graves in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. My FBI training kicked in, calculating angles and distances, looking for weapons and escape routes. But I was outnumbered 50 to 1 in a room full of criminals, and my backup team was miles away. Even if I could get to my service weapon, I'd never make it out alive. "Vincent, wait!" The voice that cut through the tension was old and gravelly, carrying the authority of someone who'd earned respect through decades of loyal service. Sal Benedetto had come around from behind the bar, his arthritic hands raised in a gesture of peace. "What is it, old man?" Vincent snapped, not releasing his grip on my collar. Sal was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between recognition and shock, like he was seeing a ghost walk through his front door. "Vincent, let him go," Sal said. "Oh, quietly. You don't understand who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Vincent replied. "Some two-bit accountant who's been asking too many questions. Some nobody who needs to learn that there are consequences for sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." But Sal was shaking his head, his weathered face pale with an emotion that might have been fear or grief or both. "No," the old bartender said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's not some nobody, Vincent. That's Mickey Torres's little brother. The name hit that room like a thunderclap. Mickey Torres. Not Michael Torres, my brother's real name, but Mickey, the nickname that only his closest friends had used. The name that apparently carried weight in this den of criminals and killers. Vincent's grip on my collar loosened so suddenly that I nearly fell backward. His face went through a series of expressions, confusion, recognition, then something that looked very much like fear. Around the bar, conversations stopped mid-sentence. Men who'd been carefully avoiding our confrontation now turned to stare openly, their faces showing the same shocked recognition that was written across Vincent's features. The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear the whiskey, glasses trembling on the bar, could hear Vincent's labored breathing, could hear my own heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Because in that moment, everyone in the Red Rose Lounge realized the same terrible truth. Vincent Torino hadn't just been threatening some random accountant who'd wandered into the wrong bar. He'd been about to kill the brother of Mickey Torres, the man whose murder had been the worst mistake the Torino family had ever made. The best part of this story is coming up next. Make sure you're subscribed, because the truth about my brother's connection to this criminal family will change everything you think you know about this story. The silence in the Red Rose Lounge stretched on, like the moment between lightning and thunder. Vincent's hand had fallen away from my collar completely, and he was staring at me like I'd just risen from the dead. Around the room, hardened criminals who'd seen every form of violence imaginable looked genuinely shaken by Sal's revelation. "Mickey Torres," Vincent repeated slowly, as if testing the words for poison. "Mickey Torres is dead. Has been for 5 years." "Yeah, he's dead," Sal confirmed, his voice heavy with old grief. "And this is his baby brother David, the one Mickey talked about all the time. The one who was going to be a cop like their old man." The pieces were clicking into place now, creating a picture I'd never expected to see. My brother hadn't just been investigating the Torino family. He'd been working for them. He'd been part of their organization, trusted enough that these hardened criminals still spoke his name with respect 5 years after his death. "But his name is Chen," Vincent protested, confusion evident in his voice. "David Chen." Sal shook his head sadly. "Mickey's brother went into law enforcement after the accident, changed his name, probably went undercover. Smart kid, just like his brother." The old bartender looked at me with eyes that had seen 3 decades of mob history. "You're FBI, ain't you, kid? Come looking for answers about what happened to Mickey." There was no point in denying it anymore. My cover was blown, my investigation was compromised, but for the first time in 5 years, I was about to learn the truth about my brother's death. "Detective David Torres, NYPD, I said, sticking to a partial truth that might keep me alive a few minutes longer. "Financial Crimes Unit." Vincent was backing away from me now, his predatory confidence replaced by something that looked very much like panic. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "I almost killed Mickey Torres's brother. Uncle Anthony is going to have my head." "Why?" I asked, finding my voice despite the surreal nature of the situation. "What was my brother to you people?" Sal gestured for me to sit back down, then poured himself a double shot of whiskey from the top shelf. His hands were shaking as he raised the glass to his lips. "Mickey wasn't just our accountant," Sal said quietly. "He was family, not blood family, but the kind of family you choose. Smart kid, honest kid, never asked for more than he earned." He drained the whiskey and poured another. "Your brother saved this organization, David. When the feds were closing in on our money laundering operation 10 years ago, Mickey redesigned our entire financial system, made it bulletproof, kept a lot of good men out of prison." Vincent had slumped into a chair at a nearby table, his head in his hands. "I didn't know," he kept repeating. "How was I supposed to know?" "Know what?" I demanded. "What happened to Michael? What really happened 5 years ago?" That's when the back room door opened and Anthony Torino himself stepped into the main bar. At 68 years old, he was still an imposing figure, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He'd been listening to the entire conversation from his private office. "Vincent," Anthony's voice carried the quiet authority of a man who'd never needed to raise it to be obeyed. "Go wait in the car, now." Vincent scrambled to his feet and hurried toward the exit without another word. When the door closed behind him, Anthony turned his attention to me. "Detective Torres," he said formally, "I want you to know that your brother's death was not sanctioned by this family. In fact, it was the worst decision anyone associated with us has ever made." Anthony poured himself a glass of wine from a bottle that had been waiting on the bar, then gestured for me to join him at a corner table away from the other patrons. 5 years ago, Mickey discovered that Vincent was skimming money from our operations. Anthony continued. "Not just small amounts. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over several months. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together. Michael was going to expose him." "More than that," Anthony said. "Mickey had already gathered evidence, financial records, transaction histories, everything the FBI would need to not only nail Vincent, but to bring down our entire money laundering operation. He was planning to turn state's evidence. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My brother was going to become an informant." Anthony nodded gravely. "Vincent found out about the meeting Mickey had scheduled with federal prosecutors, panicked, made the stupidest decision in the history of stupid decisions. He had Michael killed. Without consulting me, without permission, without thinking about the consequences." Anthony's voice was cold with old anger. "Vincent ordered that hit on his own authority, thinking he could solve his problem quietly." Sal spoke up from behind the bar. What Vincent didn't understand was that Mickey wasn't just another accountant. He was respected, loved even. When word got out about what happened, there was nearly a war within the family, Anthony finished. Vincent's supporters against mine. Good men died because of his stupidity. I was trying to process everything I was hearing. My brother, the straight-laced accountant I'd idolized, had been working for the mob. But he'd also been planning to bring them down, to do the right thing, even though it would have destroyed his life and put his family in danger. "Vincent spent 2 years in prison," Anthony continued. "Partly because we made sure certain evidence found its way to prosecutors. It was the only way to keep peace in the family. But now he's out, and he's been trying to reclaim his position, trying to prove he's still valuable to the organization." Anthony studied my face carefully. "What he doesn't know is that I've been waiting for the right opportunity to settle Mickey's account permanently." The implication was clear. Anthony was offering me Vincent's head on a platter, justice for my brother's murder, served mob style. "I can't be part of a murder," I said. Anthony smiled, but it was a cold expression. "Who said anything about murder? Vincent just tried to assault a federal law enforcement officer in front of 50 witnesses. I'm sure that's worth at least another stint in federal prison." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "Everything you need to know about Vincent's current activities. Drug deals, extortion, illegal gambling operations. Enough evidence to put him away for 20 years. I stared at the envelope like it was a live grenade. Taking it would mean compromising my integrity as a law enforcement officer, but it would also mean justice for Michael's murder. "There's more," Anthony said quietly. "Mickey left something for you. He knew Vincent was getting suspicious, knew there might be trouble. He wanted to make sure his family was protected. Sal brought over a safety deposit box key, worn smooth by years of handling. Bank of Manhattan, Lower East Side. Mickey set it up in your name 5 years ago. The key was warm in my palm, carrying the weight of my brother's final gift to the little brother he'd tried to protect, even in death." "Why?" I asked Anthony. "Why help me now?" The old crime boss stood up, straightening his tie with practiced precision. "Because Mickey Torres was the best man I ever knew, criminal or otherwise. Because Vincent's stupidity cost me a friend and nearly destroyed my family. And because some debts can only be paid with interest. As Anthony headed back toward his private office, he paused at the door. "Detective Torres, you have 24 hours to decide what kind of justice you want for your brother, the legal kind or the permanent kind." The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with Sal and the weight of an impossible decision. Justice for Michael's murder was finally within reach, but the price of that justice would be compromising everything I'd sworn to uphold as a law enforcement officer. The irony wasn't lost on me. To honor my brother's memory, I might have to betray the principles he'd died trying to uphold. Outside, Vincent Torino was sitting in his car, probably planning his next move, unaware that his past had finally caught up with him in the form of Mickey Torres's little brother. The question was, what kind of brother would I choose to be? What do you think I should have done? Taken the mob's help to get justice for my brother, or stuck to the legal system even if it meant Vincent might escape punishment? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts on family loyalty versus professional duty. Sometimes the most difficult choices are between two different kinds of right, and sometimes the people we think are our enemies are the only ones who can give us what we need. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories about family, justice, and the complicated ways that our past can catch up with us in the most unexpected places.